Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're re-diving deep into one of the most chilling and misunderstood chapters of American history, the Salem Witch Trials. Most of us have heard the name, but what really happened in that small Puritan village back in 1692? It's a story of fear, superstition, and a mass hysteria that spiraled completely out of control, leaving a dark stain on the pages of history. It wasn't just a simple witch hunt. It was a complex storm of social tension, religious extremism, and personal grudges. So let's set the scene. We're in Salem Village, Massachusetts, at the end of the 17th century. Life here is tough. The community is isolated, facing threats from nearby Native American tribes. A recent smallpox epidemic and the harsh realities of colonial life. The people are devout Puritans who believe the devil is a very real, tangible force, actively trying to corrupt their city on a hill. They see evil lurking in the dark forests and, as it turns out, in their own neighbors. The whole ordeal kicks off in the cold winter of 1692, inside the home of Reverend Samuel Parris. His 9-year-old daughter, Betty Parris, and his 11-year-old niece, Abigail Williams, start having strange fits. They're screaming, throwing things, contorting their bodies into bizarre positions, and making strange noises. A local doctor, William Griggs, can't find any physical cause for their ailments. His diagnosis? The girls are under an evil hand. They are bewitched. Soon, other young women in the village start showing the same terrifying symptoms. Ann Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, and others join the ranks of the afflicted girls. Pressured to name who was tormenting them, the girls point their fingers at 3 women who were already on the fringes of society. The first was Tituba, Reverend Parris's enslaved woman from the Caribbean. The second was Sarah Good, a homeless beggar. And the third was Sarah Osborne, an elderly, impoverished woman who rarely attended church. These 3 women were easy targets. They had no power, no social standing to defend themselves. On March 1st, 1692, they were arrested and brought before the local magistrates, John Hathon and Jonathan Corwin. The 2 Sarahs maintained their innocence. But Tituba, likely under extreme pressure and maybe even physical coercion, confessed. But she didn't just confess to witchcraft. She spun a vivid, terrifying tale of meeting the devil, who appeared as a tall man in a black coat with a book. She said she signed his book and saw the names of Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne in it, along with several others she couldn't yet identify. Tituba's confession was like throwing gasoline on a fire. It proved that witches were real, and they were right there in Salem. Her stories of a witch's coven, flying on sticks, and communing with animal familiars confirmed the community's deepest fears. The panic exploded. The afflicted girls began naming more and more people. The accusations started to move up the social ladder, from outcasts to respected, church-going members of the community. Martha Corey, a woman known for her piety, was accused. Then Rebecca Nurse, a highly respected 71-year-old grandmother, was named. People were shocked. If Rebecca Nurse could be a witch, then anyone could. To deal with the growing number of accused, a special court was set up, the Court of Oya and Termina, which means to hear and to determine. The chief magistrate was William Stoughton, a man who firmly believed in the reality of witchcraft and was determined to stamp it out. A key problem with this court was its acceptance of spectral evidence. This was testimony from the afflicted girls who claimed that the spirits or specters of the accused were attacking them, even while the accused person's physical body was somewhere else. This type of evidence was impossible to disprove. How can you prove your spirit wasn't somewhere torturing someone? The trials were a chaotic spectacle. The afflicted girls would writhe and scream in the courtroom, claiming the accused were tormenting them right there and then. If an accused person looked at them, they'd fall to the ground in a fit. If they recited the Lord's Prayer, something a witch was supposedly unable to do perfectly, the girls would claim the devil was whispering it in their ear. The accused had no legal counsel, were presumed guilty, and were pressured to confess. The logic was twisted. If you confessed, you were spared execution because you could then name other witches. If you maintained your innocence, you were seen as defiant and in league with the devil, and you would be hanged. The first person to be executed was Bridget Bishop on June 10th. She was an outspoken woman who owned a tavern and dressed in a way that some Puritans found flamboyant. She maintained her innocence to the very end, proclaiming on the gallows, "I am no witch. I am innocent. I know nothing of it," but her pleas were ignored. Over the next few months, the hangings continued. 19 people, men and women, were executed on Gallows Hill. One of the most tragic and brutal stories is that of Giles Corey, an 81-year-old farmer. When he was accused, he refused to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. He knew that if he did, his trial was a foregone conclusion, and he would be convicted and his property forfeited, leaving his family with nothing. By refusing to plead, he stopped the legal process. The punishment for this was horrific. He was subjected to peine forte et dure, a form of torture where heavy stones were piled on his chest to force a plea. For 2 days, he lay there, refusing to speak, except to reportedly demand more weight. He died under the crushing weight. But because he was never convicted, his farm passed to his sons. So what caused all this? Historians point to a combination of factors. There were long-standing feuds and property disputes within Salem Village. Many of the accusers came from the more rural, less prosperous western side of the village, while many of the accused came from the more affluent, merchant-connected eastern side. The accusations were a way for the powerless to attack the powerful. Reverend Parris himself was a contentious figure, and some of the accusations may have been aimed at undermining his authority or settling scores with his supporters. There's also the theory of ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that can grow on rye, a staple crop in Salem. If ingested, it can cause symptoms like muscle spasms, vomiting, delusions, and hallucinations, symptoms very similar to what the afflicted girls described. While it's a compelling theory, it doesn't explain why the afflictions were so targeted or why they stopped when they did. Most historians agree that the primary cause was a form of mass sociogenic illness or mass hysteria fueled by genuine religious fear. These girls weren't necessarily faking it, at least not at first. They were caught in a feedback loop of fear and suggestion. Their culture had taught them the devil was real, and when the doctor suggested witchcraft, their minds provided the context for their suffering. Soon, they gained a level of power and attention they had never experienced before, which likely motivated them to continue. By the autumn of 1692, doubts began to creep in. The accusations were getting out of hand, even targeting the wife of Governor William Phips. Influential ministers like Increase Mather started to publicly question the use of spectral evidence, arguing it was better that 10 suspected witches escape than that one innocent person be condemned. In October, Governor Phips ordered a stop to the proceedings and dissolved the court of Oyer and Terminer. He replaced it with a new Superior Court of Judicature, which disallowed spectral evidence. Without it, the cases fell apart. The remaining prisoners were released, and the trials were over. In the years that followed, the colony slowly came to terms with the terrible injustice that had occurred. In 1697, the General Court ordered a day of fasting and prayer for the tragedy. Samuel Sewell, one of the judges, stood up in church and publicly confessed his error and guilt. In 1711, the colony passed a bill restoring the good names of many of the victims and offered financial compensation to their families. One of the main accusers, Anne Putnam Jr., publicly apologized in 1706, blaming her actions on the delusion of the devil. The Salem Witch Trials serve as a powerful and timeless warning about the dangers of extremism, groupthink, and what can happen when fear is allowed to overwhelm reason and due process. It's a story of how a community gripped by terror turned on itself with devastating consequences. It reminds us to question authority, to demand real evidence, and to always protect the presumption of innocence. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this gave you a deeper understanding of this complex moment in history. What are your thoughts on what happened in Salem? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more deep dives into history, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. See you next time.